Queensland winemaker with a passion for quirky drops is producing the Southern Hemisphere version of a rare Italian winter wine. Ian Henderson says the unusual microclimate on his Granite Belt vineyard at Ballindine means his grapes can be picked in the dead of winter, several months after the last fruit in the country has been harvested. While the Italians in Piedmont have only had the right conditions to make winter wine 3 times in the last 100 years, this vineyard has clocked up 5 successive vintages in the past 5 years.
In February last year, this vineyard looked like any other heading for the 2010 vintage. Remarkably though, by winter, when all the other grapes in the country had long been harvested, this fruit would still be on the vine, left there on purpose.
The Nebbiolo grape seems to lend itself to extended time on the vine. It's quite a tough-skinned, strong-performing grape. It's an Italian variety, grows in the very far north of Italy, up in a region called Piedmont, up in the mountains.
Why are you growing it?
I love Italian varietals. I love everything about Italian varietals. I've married into an Italian family. It's a chance to make something that's not Barossa Shiraz and Clare Valley Riesling, to try and make something new for Australia.
Other wineries grow Nebbiolo, but there's something about this hill, this block, the way it faces, the steepness, something that allows Ian Henderson to do something as rare as a winter pick.
Our particular vineyard is on an unusual site. It's a very steep slope, very high altitude and very far north, which means that when winter comes, it comes very quickly, and we transition from hot and dry to cold and dry very quickly, which means the disease dies from the cold, and that enables us to do the drying on the vine.
Frost is normally the scourge of grape growers, but not here.
How many frosts will they have had, do you think, by the time you come to pick them?
Depending on the year, probably 10 to 15 frosts by the time we actually pick them. But again, that's very important. Remarkably, for this particular variety at this site, the fruit doesn't shrivel and go rotten and dry like a raisin. It stays ripe, brown and plump, doesn't lose acid, doesn't accumulate any more sugar. It's just quite bizarre.
Number 1, that's a gold medal wine, that one there, so I don't think we'll have any.
Ian Henderson's a trained winemaker, and that Italian family he married into, the Pugliese, well, they run one of Queensland's best-known wineries, Ballindine Estate.
Number 1.
Several years ago, Ian left the family business to make wine vinegar, but he couldn't give up winemaking.
I only make one wine a year, so I'm going to make something interesting.
He was inspired to do a winter harvest after reading about an Italian winter wine.
I heard about Christmas Day Nebbiolo in Barolo. On the very best of years, they can pick the grapes on Christmas Day. And Christmas Day, of course, in the north of Italy is the dead middle of winter. So just one year we left a row and thought we'd see what happened. And we produced a stunning wine, 2005, by chance. So, but unlike Barolo, where they've only managed to do Christmas Day Barolo 3 times in the last century, I've done it 5 years in a row.
How cold is it today?
Freezing, but it's not as cold as it has been.
Harvesting for a winter wine is chilly work for Ian's family and friends.
I would say it probably had close to 15 good quality frosts on the grapes before we picked them, and hundreds of hours below zero.
Winter was wet, so yields were low, 1.5 tons all up. Ian Henderson reckons this was the last fruit picked in Australia for the 2010 vintage.
I mean, it's July. It's incredibly unusual. There were no leaves on the vines for 6 weeks. They just sat bare on the vine. We had to fight some birds off, which is always a challenge when you're the last grapes in the vineyard or the last grapes in the area. You're the only grapes there for the birds and the pigs to eat. But we got some good stuff this year.
Because there's dehydration involved, so you're not dealing with fresh grapes, you're dealing with partially dried fresh grapes, which give you a tenth of the production that you normally get of a Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc. Amarone essentially means a red table wine which is bitter and sweet, but these wines have high alcohol, 14 to 16%, so they're very warming, and of course they're partly medicinal.
Master of Wine Peter Scudamore-Smith says late harvest winemaking is a chancy enterprise.
There's a big element of risk in making late harvest dessert table wines. I hope he's charging well. I hope he's charging very well, because these wines are wines which age a long time. It might take him a decade before his peers taste and recognise wines of 10 years of age and say, wow, wasn't that a great drop, and wasn't that a really heroic style of wine?
He's delighted to see a winemaker trying something different.
I really applaud it. The last 2-3 years, the overseas journalists have been absolutely lambasting this country for making industrial wine. And this style is at the exact opposite of the spectrum. And this man is making something really special. I'm really looking forward to tasting it.
Yep.
He says overseas there's a good market for this wine style.
In Valpolicella, where they make the Amarone, there are 10 million cases a year of that style now. It's extremely popular. Prices $50 to $100 a bottle. I'd like to think that he's made something which is exactly his style. It's his definition, and it's his flag in the sand.
After harvest, the grapes are taken to Warren Smith's winery a few k's up the road.
It started out as just something that we thought we'd have a go at, just to see what we could do with a different style and a different new variety. So things like that it's interesting. It's not, it's an unusual wine, and it's not going to be to everybody's taste, but it's interesting and it's different, and that's why it's fun to make.
Do you and Ian have an expectation that you'll be able to do this every year?
Probably not. I'm sure there'll be some years that'll be more difficult than others, but I think generally it'll be a go.
In December, it was bottling time, a low-volume, low-tech affair.
We've done 5 vintages now, and we've made 5 completely different styles every year, trying to use all of those skills I learned as a winemaker, and allowing each individual season to be reflected in the wine as well. We've used old oak, new oak, we've done extended skin contact. We've just bottled today our 3-year barrel extended aged 2007 vintage. 3 years in oak. No one in Australia does 3 years in oak and does it, regularly. We might not do it again. We just tried it once for fun. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's do it again next year.
And after bottling, a civilised lunch, served, of course, with a late harvest Nebbiolo from a previous vintage. Only 800 bottles were made from the 2010 harvest. For Ian Henderson, it's not about making a lot, it's about making a little of something interesting, a way of flexing his winemaking muscles.
Would you like some more?
Yeah, that's right.
I'd encourage everyone to go and find their niche. It may not necessarily be the style of wine that we're making, but everyone can do something unusual and different. It's such a crowded marketplace. There's thousands of wineries in Australia. Go and find the one thing you do well and do it well, and scream and yell about it, and about what makes you so different and so unusual. I like being different and unusual. I just don't want to fit into the standard mould of Australian wine anymore.
Peter Scudamore-Smith was curious to try Ian Henderson's take on the Italian classic.
This man has managed to capture some of the character of Nebbiolo, even though it's been very, very late harvested. And on the palate, lovely.
So he's nailed it?
It's lovely. It's lovely. I think more Australians and more Queenslanders who just really love the Nebbiolo grape need to taste this.
So how long is someone...
It's just another example of wonderful innovation with the enormous influx of new varietals from the Mediterranean regions of Europe. There's a lot of opportunity for innovation in new varieties. So there's plenty of space on the rack for new makers and new styles, and particularly those that are great for digestives and drinking late in the evening, you might say.